I think that Mike Carden was the only person who could have wrote a book like
that. It's just so very well written.
500 Liverpool dockers fought for their jobs after being sacked for refusing to cross a picket line.
Mike goes at this thing from all sides. As John has said, he uses primary sources, including diaries, interviews at the time, films, videos, TNG documents, and he tells the story in all of its complexity and contradictions, which means that you can learn from it.
And he's got a brilliant mind, Mike, an absolutely brilliant mind. But on top of all that, he, along with a number of stewards here today, he lived and breathed that dispute every day. Every day for 2.5 years, for every twist and turn.
It's reminiscent Thomas Hardy-ish at times with the descriptions. But what strikes me through this book and every participant from then to when our dispute happened was the people involved knew their worth, they knew their value, and they were prepared to fight for it.
This book is that important because that struggle, journey, whatever you call it, I said it was a journey. And we went on that journey for 2 years, 8 months, with all our support, all our families, all our international people.
It's impossible to be neutral, especially as a direct participant. But I think it's written in a fair voice, in general, even where some of the actors who are certainly don't come off on the right side of history, I think they're given a fair hearing where it's appropriate to give them a fair hearing.
It shows in the dispute the total democracy of that dispute. There was very, very little in that book that I didn't know. And that speaks volumes because everyone involved in that dispute knew everything.
Throughout the 2.5 years, we used to meet our members week in, week out. At the start, it was on a Wednesday and a Friday. And Transport House, the old Transport House, was full then, full to the rafters, 500 men and women there.
Our meetings were open, anyone could come in. The stewards, Jimmy Nolan and Mike Carden, said, let them, they're open, the doors are open, we've got nothing to hide. All we wanted to do was tell everyone what was going on.
The democracy that was shown in those particular meetings, any person who had a point of view, any person who wanted to say what was on his mind had that opportunity. And a lot of them took it up.
At the end of every meeting, Mike would never speak first, he was always the last and most probably had the most difficult job. He had to sum up the actions of what had gone on in the previous week. When Mike had finished, you'd feel 10 foot tall and you feel like going out again.
Internationalism is the stem, in my opinion, that grows the flower. We had Liverpool Dockers delegates and the committee people in Australia going around to every single port. Now, Australia's not a little country, and it costs a lot of money to send them. But the beauty of this was that they were developing the international spirit of longshoremen, dockers and wharfies.
In the book, Chapter 7 tells the story of the Neptune Jade. And what happened here was they had a picket of the Neptune Jade and they couldn't unload the ship in Oakland. They sailed around in Oakland Harbor for 3 days and gave up. And they went up to Vancouver and they had another picket, so they couldn't unload in Vancouver. And then they went across the Pacific and they went to Japan. They got to Yokohama, another picket. They couldn't unload the boat. And finally, they got to Taiwan, to Kaohsiung, and it was finally worked by non-union labor, but not before the shipping companies had hit LabourNet 1,000 times clicking on it, because they already knew that you had to check the internet for strike plans.
Two of the greatest things, of course, is the CASA, and then the other one was the International Dock Workers Movement. Because when you think about it, that was created within the first 6 months of the dispute, and the very first international meeting, I think we only had about 12, 15 countries. When you think that that's now blossomed into a massive organisation called the IDC, International Dock Workers Council, which has thousands of members all over the world.
I remember as a child my dad talking about the Blue Union. He used to be a member of the Blue Union, and it became undemocratic, he said. And a lot of other men thought the same. And then he joined the White Union, which was the TNG. And Mike clearly illustrates that all the way through, every one of them is very undemocratic. They weren't supportive of the workforce.
I think the trade union movement hides behind the anti-trade union laws. That was the case then, it's the case now. Why is it that someone, is it 5,000 miles away, Jim, would support Liverpool dockers and trade unions in this country wouldn't?
With this anti-trade union laws, I've never really heard any union organising marches and demonstrations to have them changed, because obviously to some officials, not all, but some of them, it suits them right down to the ground to be able to say, sorry boys, we'd love to help, but our hands are tied. There's anti-trade union laws. So I think first and foremost, them laws have to be tackled and thrown out.
I think what's very obvious in the book is the people that we elect to represent us they go and do their own thing. So perhaps this is what needs tackling. The union works on representative democracy. So maybe it needs to change to direct democracy.
The leaders, the hierarchy of the union, they had a plan, and their plan was based on our plan. This is how crazy it was. Our plan to win the dispute was to go to every port, if possible, every country where Liverpool traded with, where the Mersey Docks and Harbour Company traded with. The moment we were coming home and going back to our membership to tell them what we'd done, the hierarchy of the union were planning to send someone out there or speak directly on the phone to the union leaders, and were threatening them. They were threatening them. You do anything physically to support the Liverpool dockers, and you've got big trouble, because we're not supporting. We're the official union and we're not supporting them.
The stewards had called a second international conference held at the Trade Union Centre on Hardman Street in August 1996. And ITF affiliates had been invited to attend, but most did not. And it appeared that the ITF had dissuaded them. Two decades later, Mike obtained a message in which Cockcroft confirmed Len McCluskey's claim that Bill Morris stopped the ITF from galvanizing solidarity action for dock workers. This was one of several occasions on which he threatened without any action to disaffiliate from the ITF. So what they were worried about, they weren't worried about the shipping companies, they were worried about the T&G pulling the money out.
If the official union or any official organisation, they hand the power back to the rank and file, they shouldn't be scared of it, because it works. Me and Terry went back on the docks 10 years ago. First thing we did, we met John Lynch. We said to John, look, we won't go in to meet any boss ever without you and your shop stewards. For 10 years we did that. Now, when we went on the docks, I think the union was 45%. When we left, it was 95%. It's worked because we decided that the rank and file were going to run Liverpool docks again. It goes into detail of the failure of the left within the Transport and General Workers Union to hold Bill Morris to account. But in 1987, I think it was, when we had the BDC in Brighton, the Liverpool dockers won the vote. Now, on the platform was the rank and file from the Executive Council, along with Bill Morris and a few other people. But an instruction was passed. We don't know what was actually going on. But they overturned the vote. And that is the whole essence of the dispute.
The failure of the TGWU to support the Liverpool dockers was not the responsibility of one union official or one general secretary. As a democratic organization, it was the responsibility of the membership. Now, here in Liverpool, in the docks, you had a very highly educated, very highly motivated membership who actually wanted to know what was going on. If the rest of the union had been made up of workplaces like that, do you think that the General Executive Council would have got away with it? I don't. So I don't think that it's just a question of asking the leadership to trust the rank and file. It's also a question of telling the rank and file, if you don't take this union by the scruff of the neck, that's what you're going to get. The only way out of this is for you to take it.